introduce yourself just for the benefit of the recording.
Okay.
All, please.
Right. Okay. My name's Frank Toll. I'm a contemporary artist and a art and design lecturer of University College UHI.
That's great. Okay, so tell us we're seeing some of the exciting work you're doing with gunpowder.
Yes.
Just a lot of people would be very surprised that you can use gunpowder as a creative thing and not a destructive thing, I suppose.
Well, I got into gunpowder when I was in art school back in 2005 in Duncan Johnston. But obviously, health and safety, you wouldn't be allowed to use that, okay, because it's a fire hazard, and we know what happens with fire hazards in art schools in recent times, which I won't go into. But yeah, but I had to make clear that I am not the first artist to use gunpowder. There have been other artists, maybe in recent times, who have used gunpowder, especially in America and also in China. But the main difference with me is that there were two differences actually. The gunpowder work that I do are more refined, while others tend to use more of it as a performance space. But I'm using it more of a draftsman contemporary art piece space where I actually make fine art, or contemporary art in this case. And the second thing is that when I originally started using gunpowder, it was an experimentation towards making drawing exciting, because I was teaching drawing, but I was predominantly a painter. When I got back into drawing, when I started teaching drawing or lecturing drawing, it started to make me realize that I need to innovate, because I think in these times, especially in contemporary and modern times, an artist or an entrepreneur would be expected to innovate, to come up with new ideas, something that kind of really push the times. And I think that overall, the gunpowder work that I do have now taken on a new meaning, especially on a social activism kind of level, where I'm actually advocating more on a peaceful or an element of peace, because in a way I'm using a destructive element and make it into a creative force, and making images of, in my case, nature or depicting life. And there's a variety of things that catch my attention when I'm making art.
How does it work then? How do you, what's the practicality of using gunpowder in the drawing process?
I think what it is, it's a high risk approach. You cannot predict the way that gunpowder actually reacts, because there's always a chance I could put too much, it can disintegrate the paper. I can put too less, it doesn't actually burn through the paper. I actually use handmade paper, so it's quite thick. I think what it is, it's like a destructive element, and it's almost like it's bringing beauty within destruction. And in a way, the process itself can be a bit melancholy. You have to destroy something to create, which is, I think that's basically life in general, or even the age of species. Look what happened to the dinosaurs. So the dinosaurs were not extinct. Human beings would not be on this planet anyway. So I think with the gunpowder and the way the process works, I think it's more or less I had to find out the way it works for me. So I couldn't exactly go to a library and pick up a book and say, oh, that's a book how to use gunpowder. There was a lot of experimentations. I had to call, for example, Police Scotland, what I can and cannot do. And near accidents, which I've had a few of those actually. But overall, I think it was a way for me to innovate a new process for myself that works for me, because an artist in general should have their own individual process and how to innovate that process. And that's just being part of an artist and the journey as being an artist.
And of course, you now have this some of this work being shown in an exhibition as well.
Yes, at the Royal Ulster Academy in Belfast. I am one of 5 Scottish artists selected for that exhibition. I'm representing Inverness as well as Glasgow, where I'm originally from. And there were over 2,000, just about 2,000 applicants, national and international, which was shortlisted down to 200, and out of 200, there's only 5 Scottish artists. So pretty tight in that kind of area. But for me, showing in the Royal Ulster Academy has a lot of significant meaning for me, as well as being recognised by a Royal Institute, by my peers of that level. The other important thing for me is that I am more or less leading the kind of the banner for Scottish contemporary art on a much more of a national and international kind of platform, because I think with Scottish art there's a strong tradition of technique and draftsmanship, and there's a long history of it. And I think with a danger such as Brexit, exhibiting on a national or international platform, even like exhibiting in England, could be a little bit more difficult for Scottish artists if Brexit does go through.
Right. So that's something that's kind of looming over a lot of people in our
Yeah,
world at the moment.
I think in particular with me, it does strike a chord, and the reason being it's not really more I know that Brexit could be seen as a political element, but there's also the social element as well. For example, the Good Friday Agreement in Ireland is threatened because of the Prime Minister's view on Brexit. Now, part of that reason why I'm exhibiting in Ireland in the Royal Ulster Academy is because I've been working with, for the past year, I am Swedish Development Partner, which is an organisation which take illegal firearms from war-torn countries, discommission them, break the guns down, melt them, and actually make products and sell these products and bring it back to these communities that have been torn by by conflict. And the Humane Metal initiative is something that I strongly support, and I think with Ireland it's quite a good platform because Ireland had a lot of issues. I remember growing up when I was quite young in the 1980s and 1990s, the Troubles. And one thing I am doing in Ireland is also wearing the Humanium metal watch. It's a timepiece watch which is actually made out of discommissioned illegal firearms. So in a way, indirectly, perhaps, but I'm more or less going in as an advocate of peace. Will I say I'm going against the political tides with Westminster? I don't see myself in that retrospect. So
It's a wider
it's a wider
thing, much
yeah.
wider, much
I
wider.
mean, the gun issues. I mean, I work with gunpowder and I use gunpowder as a creative element, but with gunpowder and the Humanium Metal Watch, initiative, I think the message that I'm trying to portray is like this. You have to think about this every minute there's always somebody killed from gun violence anywhere in the world, and I think it's a very heated topic. In Scotland, for example, I mean, me using gunpowder and the Humanium Metal initiative project that I'm involved with, I think it's actually much more rooted quite deeply in Scotland, especially with the Dublin massacre in the 1990s, which I still clearly remember because I was in secondary school at that time, and I do recall hearing the news about that. So I think for me, it's always struck quite an emotional chord with me. Even in, for example, in Hong Kong, the Hong Kong protests at the moment, the police officers are now using guns on the protesters. I grew up in Hong Kong and when I was 3 years old. My grandfather, who fought against the Communist Party, he from the age of 3 in Hong Kong, he taught me how to shoot a gun because he was afraid of his grandson growing up in a communist regime, which was in the height of the Cold Era. So I cannot really blame him for that. But that memory of me holding something destructive is still ingrained in my mind, and it's quite terrifying in a way to actually think you're holding an object or a tool that could potentially take another life away.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose with gunpowder, so many bad things have been done with gunpowder.
I think
over the centuries,
yeah,
you're doing something different.
Well, gunpowder initially was invented in ancient China as an elixir for eternal life, but the Chinese alchemists didn't realize they stumbled into something else, which was an explosive force. Gunpowder, if you look at all the inventions in the world, you have like the printing press, you got the light bulb, you have the Renaissance. Gunpowder in mankind's history is a major game changer to a lot of things. And you think about how gunpowder is used, it is used in the most destructive way throughout the ages. So hopefully, like I am Swedish development partner with the Humane Metal Initiative, I'm also projecting the kind of a message of peace by using gunpowder as a peaceful, creative outlet instead of something that's used to destroy life or take a life away.
Fantastic. And obviously, I mean, this is for radio. So, can you describe some of the work that you've created for us as well, for the purposes of the listeners?
I think the work that I do is when people ask me, "Am I a landscape painter? Am I am I a figurative painter?" I really can't really answer that because I was trained as an abstract conceptual painter when I was in art school. But when people ask me the question, "What kind of artist am I?" or "What do I depict?" I usually say, my art is an honest reflection of where my head's at. And I've painted a variety of different subjects over the years. I mean, with oil paintings, because I was trained as an oil painter as well. I painted like Plague Doctors, Dante's Inferno, which were quite really high profile exhibitions. But for these purposes, I started using gunpowder to make works of observation. For example, my lecturer was trained by the artist Lucian Freud. And Lucian Freud was really pernickety on focus on a subject matter and depict it. For me, I'm more or less trained in that same manner. If I look at something like an object, like a pair of hair gestures, just by looking at it and just depicting it in gunpowder, it's fascinating to me. Because when I make work, I have to be quite fascinating towards myself. I can't make work just to please others. If people understand where I'm coming from in my work and when I make my work, then I've actually touched an emotional chord with them. And and as I said before, my art is an honest reflection of where my head's at. So that's why my subject matter can vary from natural creatures like owls and bats, and then you can see these really melancholy, sad paintings of a couple, or a couple of romance ending between two people. You know, all these kind of things. So it just depends what's to my fancy at the time.
And it's like you say, it's coming from it has to come from your feelings at the time. Yeah.
Because I think with art, I think the true purpose of being an artist is not only to be a depictor of your emotional expression, but also, I think for me, I painted for galleries since I was, believe it or not, I got accepted to a private gallery when I was at the age of 19. So I've been painting in the galleries for quite a long time. So I knew how to make money that young, and people think that's amazing if you're still in art school. But I think over the years as I've grown older, I think with artists, there's not enough artists today that take a more of a social stance of what they believe in. I think with art, it can be quite um, an egotistical and more about the self a lot more. And I think for me, as I've grown older and seen how the world has changed around me, I think it's more or less the fact that I like to make a difference in some ways with my work, whether it's political or social activism. Um, and if you look at famous artists throughout the ages, Picasso painted Guernica against Franco, the dictator in Spain. You got Goya painted the disasters of war when Spain was invaded by France.
So iconic pictures.
Yeah, and I think they are the most powerful pieces of work because it express what they saw and what they believe in. Mm-hmm. So I think with me doing the gunpowder and also working with the I Am Swedish development partner, I think for me it's kind of like I'm putting my stance on something that I believe in, which is anti-gun violence.
Has just one final question, maybe just has since you're based in the Highlands now in Inverness,
yes,
has your change in geographical changes, has that impacted on your work at all? Just
what's the right word to say? I'm from Glasgow originally, okay, and I did work in Perth UHI for a number of years, but I was commuting, and I grew up in Glasgow since I was a child up to my teens, and Glasgow is quite a very urban, gritty. It's always lively. But I think me relocating to Inverness, I begin to. I know it's going to sound. I'm going to sound beyond my years, but which I'm not. Hope I'm not actually, because I'm still 37. But I think for me, it has made me slow down a bit and enjoy life a bit more. And also with Inverness, there's a sense of loyalty with the population, and people tend to be loyal to those who are loyal to the city. And also, I think for me, now I'm a lecturer at Inverness College UHI, I have the pleasure to teach the future generation of Scottish artists. I wa I mean, from most of my 20s, I was known as a young, emerging contemporary artist. But for me, I think now I have the pleasure to maybe slightly step aside, but not give it up, but slightly step aside and actually pass my knowledge down to the new generation, because I've survived in a major recession. Not a lot of artists can do that. I mean, when I was during the recession, I remember I was technically starving, not having nothing. You don't know if you're going to sell work. I was literally painting for my supper. Will I take back that kind of experience that I've gained all these years? No, I wouldn't take it back, because that's experience that I can pass on to to future generation of artists and to my students, and just say like, look, these are the survival skills, and believe it or not, I went through them. So what I teach is basically what I do.
And a real belief in the importance of art and
I
the
think
creative process.
the creative process. I think with art, my one thing I do campaign quite strongly is that art, being an artist, at some point, it should not be seen as just skiving or whatever. Because the reason being, and I'm quite strong on this topic, is that sometimes students don't really get the parental support that they want to do art. I've heard so many students telling me my mum won't let me, my parents won't let me teach art or something. But for me, I had that same situation, but from my aunts and uncles who didn't believe in me originally. Thought, why am I studying art? I should be studying catering. But for me, I think I always want to drive this notion that art can, and also being an artist, is seen as a profession. And we do have, like, it is recognised as a profession because we've got a union, the artists, the Scottish Artists Union and all that kind of stuff.
That's good. No, Frank, that's really interesting. Thank you very much for
That's
coming in.
great.
That's
Pleasure.
great.
Thank you.
Yeah, cheers.
Okay.